I'm Dusty Dayshaw. I'm a fifth generation Missoula native. My family first moved here in the 1870s. And the property that we're filming this on today is part of my dad's ranch that we moved to in 1945. This area was kind of a natural migration route. The Salish, Kootenai, the Pend Oreille, the Nez Perce, who were pretty much west of the mountains tribes, although they did travel a lot to the plains in eastern Montana to hunt buffalo. This was basically the main migration route east and west between southern Idaho and up into Canada. So there was a lot of traffic through here. Glacial Lake Missoula backed up in here numerous times. There's ponds on the top of the saddle that were created by the wash of the water over that saddle as the dam suddenly burst and all the water let out. And behind me you'll notice a white quartz fireplace. It turns out that Jumbo was created by an igneous rock intrusion through some sedimentary features below it, and this ore that you see behind this, in particular some of the blue marks, and if you look carefully you'll see specks of copper ore and even a little bit of gold, if you know what you're looking for. People avoided the river bottoms because of ambushes, because they were full of downfall and brush and other things. If you stayed up on the side hills, you didn't have all that vegetation in your way, and you could also see where people were possibly going to be ahead of you to attack you. Part of the reason that they took that trail was down at the bottom of the hill by the old cookhouse are some cliffs along the highway. And you couldn't go next to the river. You had to come partway up the hill to get around the river. That came to be known as Marshall Grade. Marshall Grade was named after a fellow by the name of Marshall, who was a Civil War veteran. Marshall got some scrip from the government in exchange for his service in the Civil War, and he came west sometime around 1865 and settled in this valley below us. Someplace along in there they've built a brick kiln and fired bricks and then built from those bricks that were fired right on the site and made from clay right on the site, made the old Cook farmhouse. About the best and earliest photo I could find of this particular area. I know the photo was taken after the railroad came in 1886, but my guess is it's probably about 1890.
My name is Stan Cohen. I've been a resident of Missoula for 44 years. In the East Missoula Bonner area was actually settled in the 1880s. In 1886, A.B. Hammond, who was a very prominent businessman here in Missoula, built a big Blackfoot mill with the available timber basically from the Blackfoot area. And this was 3 years after the Northern Pacific Railroad came through the Missoula Valley. So the two things that really spurred on the business, I guess, of East Missoula, the Bonner area, and obviously in Missoula, was the mill and the railroad. In 1898, the Anaconda Copper Mining Company in Butte actually bought the mill and used it to supply timbers for the copper mines in Butte. So the area probably continued to grow quite a bit with the mill. It was a huge mill. At one time it was thought to be the biggest mill in the United States. So we had maybe, I don't know, 1,000 workers maybe. And I suspect a great amount of them lived in the East Missoula, Marshall Grade, Bonner area. The Northern Pacific came through in 1883, which really spurred up the growth of the Missoula area, in the city of Missoula. The Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul, and Pacific came through in 1908, and that again helped spur on the development of the whole entire western Montana area.
Well, this is the Cook Homestead. We've been here about 2 years. And what we're trying to do is create something a little bit more unique than what it has been in the past. And that's kind of taking modern technology and stepping back from the corporate world and becoming self-sufficient. A lot of people can, I guess they're looking at gas as being a big issue, but we've started that process already. We have a hybrid car. We're trying to grow as much of our own fruits and vegetables as possible. You can probably hear the chickens in the background. We have our own chickens for eggs, not necessarily for meat. And we'll be getting dairy goats within a week, and that's kind of what we're doing, is we're trying to produce something here that anybody can do. It's just a matter of finding the time and the effort and the desire to do it. So. Okay, well, like I said, this is the Cook Homestead, and it was built in 1886, I believe. I'm not sure of the exact day. The part of it was rebuilt, the back porch and stuff, later. The trees have been here for about 130 years, so I mean, you can tell they're magnificent trees, but a lot of the farm has kind of lost its character. There was a lot of knapweed here when we started, and so that's what we've done. We've only been here about 2 years, so it's been a lot of pulling knapweed, replanting native trees. We did add things like the greenhouse, which we might get to later. But it's really not a true farm. It's only 5 acres, or actually under 5 acres, and we're right next to East Missoula subdivision. So it's not like we're way out in the country and we have a lot to work with, but I don't think that we need a lot to work with. We are creating something as close to self-sustaining as we can find, or what we can get to. Just finding different things that we want to do. Producing our own food was one of them, but we also want to try to create an electrical or a power system so that we can generate our own electricity. We do have water rights, so we have water coming down through the property, and we also have obviously lots of sunshine out in East Missoula, so we're going to probably get some solar panels and take advantage of that. Okay, well, if we will get started, we can just walk around and I can start showing you some of the things that we have, such as we have beehives, so we produce our own honey, and we can go in that direction and look at the garden and things over there. You can see right now the beehives are fairly active. They're actually shutting down the hives for the year, and the females, they're kicking out all the males. They will all freeze to death this winter, and so next spring they'll start with a new batch. So we actually, this year, we did our first harvest just a couple weeks ago and got about 10 or 15 pounds of honey, which after the first year you don't necessarily get that much honey. It's subsequent years that we'll be getting more, up to 100 pounds from just the 2 hives. So that'll provide a lot of the sweetener for a lot of the food that we will be eating. Well, if you can't tell, the garden is pretty much done for the year. We do have some winter vegetables, or a winter garden, that we'll be harvesting from up through probably December or January. The root vegetables, carrots and things like that, we'll be leaving in. Finishing up right now is the corn and tomatoes and things like that that we need to get in before they all rot. We don't produce too much more than what we can use here on the farm, but what extra we do have, we either give away or we do sell some things at farmers market, but for the most part it's just kind of creating enough for our own use. Well, 100 years ago or more, when it was still the original homestead, 160 acres, they did lease part of the farm to a brick factory. And the brick factory is long since gone. The quality of the bricks wasn't very good, but we still see the evidence in our soil. The soil is extremely packed clay soil, so we've been spending a lot of time just adding fertilizer and adding leaf material and things like that, just to build up the quality of the soil so that we can grow it. So we do a lot of composting. We actually bring a lot of stuff from town where people are just dumping their own leaves or lawn clippings and bring it out here, and we use it in our garden. Well, when they started hybridizing, they started refining certain aspects of plants, but the original genetics is being changed. So We think that just for health reasons, we prefer the more traditional vegetables. A lot of things from Europe that have been brought over that were originally used in the colonies, for example. We've got a variety of different kinds of sunflowers, and a lot of them we don't necessarily use the seeds ourselves, but we feed it to the chickens, and the goats will eat the corn and things like that so that we can be as self-sustaining as possible. We collect a lot of our own seeds, and we also are part of a program called the Seed Exchange in Petwith. But since we're done with the harvest for most of the garden, we're just going to be taking like the sunflower seeds, the ones that we don't harvest ourselves for next year's crops or to sell or to give away. Then we'll take these and bring them up and give them to the goats or to the chickens, which are in the background. You can see them up here. And maybe an occasional green tomato they might like. Okay. And did you want to just head on up to the garden or the chicken coop? The barn, we're just finishing the construction of the barn for the goats and the sheep. And if you can't tell, almost all of the material is recycled. The windows have been recycled that were being thrown away. All of the boards were taken from a garage that was being demolished. So we're trying to do as much recycling as we can here also. It's not a very high-tech gate, but it does do the job for the time being. Right now we do have the water coming in for the chickens and for the goats is all off of the stream. It's a gravity-fed water system that we've kind of hooked up and designed. My partner actually designed all the sprinkler system for the gardens. And we only have 10 or 15 pounds of pressure, so they're low-impact sprinkler systems. But it pretty much does all the watering that we need. The chickens, we started with just a handful that we got out at a feed store. It was kind of an accident, but we ended up with a rooster in our first batch, so we decided to hatch out our own chicks this last spring. So we ended up more than tripling the size of our flock. And then a friend of ours wanted to donate an Araucana rooster for this future generation. And they ended up dropping off 6 black Australorps too. So our chicken flock is kind of growing a little faster than what we had planned. So if anybody needs eggs, just let us know. The barn is still not finished, but as we get it closer to completion, we're coming up with some good ideas for example, controlling the pests, the bugs and things around the goats. We're going to be installing bat boxes along the eaves of all the entire barn, which will help in a natural way keeping the population of insects down. Well, the goats, my aunt is currently breeding over in Helena right now, so I don't have to worry about any extras in the barnyard until next spring when they start having their kids. But we'll have 2 dairy goats that will provide all of the dairy products that we'll need for the house, and we're even going to experiment with goat cheese, and we might even try some goat ice cream, who knows. We do leave some of the scrap piles of natural branches and things like that because it gives some of the predator things around the farm. So we've noticed ermine and fox and other things here on the farm already. We have a bear also that sneaks down in the evenings in the fall. So well, if you can't tell, the original irrigation system has been here for over 100 years. And they're shutting it down at this point in the year. Our uphill neighbor, Dusty Dayshaw, is actually in charge of regulating the stream flow. But we're making plans in the future to take advantage of the water a little bit more than they have in the past. Not just for the irrigation, but we have the idea of possibly doing a hydroelectric system to create our own electricity. We've even have the water that goes into the greenhouse. There's a 1,000-gallon tank in there that creates the thermal mass to heat the greenhouse in the wintertime without any additional heat supply for it. Some of these old cottonwoods have been here for almost as long as the irrigation system, and we've obviously appreciated the water as much as the the generations of farmers that have used it. This area here, it was dug out originally to get the clay for the bricks that were being made in the brick factory. Some of the buildings in Missoula were actually built with bricks from this area. Now we're going to take advantage of the depression that's already here and dig it a little bit deeper and turn it into a pond, and hopefully work with native trout species, developing a small version of a breeding factory for native fish. The occasional wandering farmhand. All of which is volunteer. Well, a lot of the property is actually hillside and hard to come up with good ideas to use it constructively. So we're planning on trying to replant a lot of it in native plants. The hillsides and things like that, it would be best to get native plants in there that can help control any of the erosion problems that they've had over the years. And it's also one of our philosophies is we don't need 5 acres to do what we want to accomplish here by creating something self-sustaining. We want to keep as much of it as natural Montana as we can. Scattered around the property you'll also see some of the original not tropical, but original trees they planted. There's apricots and apples that they had to plant for part of the homesteading process, and some of those original trees are still here. We're hoping to get some seeds from them and keep that part of the homestead alive. Well, this actually is the tank that creates the thermal mass to keep the entire greenhouse warm all winter. And there's a couple thousand gallons back here. We actually are running the pump right now because we want to clean up the water so that we can put fish in there. One of our ideas that we would like to do is possibly grow tilapia, which would be another food source for us. And it's just using the water and what we already have put together here. The deck and the staircase and everything we had built just specifically for extra space because the dome is actually 16 feet high in the center and it's about 850 square feet on the ground level. So we're trying to do layers. We'll actually dig down at this point here and put in some of the more shadier plants. What we are doing is growing things that we can use. There's ginger in here that we can actually use for cooking. We've got figs, we've got a lot of dwarf varieties of pomegranates, citrus, things like that we can. The room is kind of cluttered right now. We haven't put in the raised beds. That's actually going to give us a lot more space because most of the plants are still in pots. But one of the things that you may see around the room are the little paper bags. Those are actually lace wings that we're going to be hatching out for. In the winter we have to control the insect population inside the greenhouse. And between the lace wings, and we also will have praying mantises. And then what is going to eat them? We do have geckos and tree frogs running around in here too. They're just hard to find, but they do keep the insect population down. So I'm taking my bad habits of collecting and saving everything and trying to put it to good use. It's October 15th in Missoula, Montana, and it's about 115 to 120 degrees up at this level in the greenhouse. This is close to the ceiling. And that's one of the problems with a lot of greenhouses is they actually create too much heat. So these vents, I've got them shut down now, but they will actually open up whenever it gets above 70 degrees. And it's a wax cylinder, so it actually cools the greenhouse down. And we actually have other fans and vents that are underneath the first layer of dirt on the ground floor that circulate airflow to warm it up in the winter, but it also cools it down in the summer. And I think it was a bow tree that Buddha received his enlightenment under. And the actual tree that he received, this is kind of beside the point, or that he received enlightenment under, they had a slip from that tree that they brought from India, and they have it in the gardens in Honolulu. And a friend of mine, they have just recently started selling slips from that one, and he got me one of those so that if I ever do get any land in Hawaii, I will have the second descendant from that original Bo tree that Buddha received enlightenment under. So, interesting story. Well, the house itself was built in 1886, so there's quite a history here. Things like the silver maples that are in the front yard. One of the original women that lived here used sap from the trees for a lot of her cooking, and the farm itself was used for kind of a lot of the German community around the Missoula area would come here for special occasions, for weddings, for feasts, Thanksgiving, things like that. So the history of the farm is quite amazing in itself. What we're trying to do is expand on what is left here and create something unique for ourselves and for the neighborhood. You can tell we're in a neighborhood when you've got lawnmowers going, so it's all part of being part of the community, and that's kind of what we want to do, is create something unique that the community can actually take part in and be part of. There's always work to be done, and it's not often that I get a chance to sit down and relax, so I hope you've had a good time enjoying what we have here.